Can I tell you about the man standing outside of my window? I want you to imagine a curtainless room, where at night the only source of light is a spotlight from the neighbor's backyard. And sometimes, in the midnight dark where all you can hear is the tick of my clock, you'll see a silhouette in that light. That is my childhood bedroom. I was horrified that if I took a look, I'd know when to crawl in. There's a game where the first thing you are told is to look outside your window, but the second thing you are told is to never look outside your window. In the indie game Look Outside, you play as Sam, and as you wake up in a dark, dingy room where the only sounds are the slow ticks of a pendulum and the slivers of light shining through your window, a constant blinking eye in your wall beckons you towards the outside, or if you choose to look, this is the core concept of the game. You start out in your carpeted apartment that looks like something is living beneath it. As soon as you exit, you see a trail of blood heading towards the left. Naturally, one goes to explore the trail. Then, you find yourself in your neighbor's washroom, where a large knife wound is across his body, and there he is brandishing a bleeding knife as he walks ever closer. The gushing, gaping wound that we usually pronounce one's death grows a giant, bloodshot green eyeball that matches his own. From here, Sam realizes that the world is not the same anymore. For those who look outside are faced with a mutation that could be worse than death itself. The setting of Look Outside is absolutely dreadful. You rest in a haunted apartment and walk across an even more haunted hallway, where you fight monsters made of Lovecraftian-like horrors. Sometimes, in places you've killed all the enemies, you still are haunted by the shades that seem to laugh at you for even considering the place safe. All the while, you collect people that are affected by it, like the worst Pokemon collection you could possibly get. And through the game, you go and find description of the horror outside. Paintings, writings, photographs, speech, and etc. Looking at the visitor is not the only requirement for it to mutate you, for your mere understanding of it allows it to rest its punishing eyes on the mortal that dare to comprehend. We can look at this another way. It is like a 2D being suddenly trying to understand a 3D sphere. It wouldn't see a spear, it would just see a line that is spontaneously growing and shrink. If we are 2D compared to a 4D deity, our perception isn't just wrong, it is a dangerous hallucination. We might think we are seeing a god, but we are actually just seeing the cross-section of something that is crushing us by existing. To perceive the visitor outside your window is to not gaze at a cosmic being, but to perceive a god in his full, truest form. And if you try looking outside, would it really be the same you that looked back? Nothing is more frightening than the fear you cannot name. The fear you get when you play the game is not one of constant horror. If I were to describe it, horror is like a man chasing you down in an alley while you run away, as that is a reaction given to you by your body. Your mind doesn't need to react in order to respond to horror. You flinch at a jump scare, you gasp and scream when a man is dropped from your closet. But dread is different. Dread does not threaten your body, but instead manipulates your mind. It is when the fear kicks in before the monster is even spotted. A growl, a scrape, a sound that should not exist in the midnight dark. You are running not because you've ever decided to run, not because something is hurting you, but because something might be there. And the possibility alone is enough to hollow you out. What dread does best is to threaten your sense of reality, to make you reconsider the laws of the world itself. It makes you shoot the monster not because it threatened to kill you, but instead by the time it showed up, your mind had already pulled the trigger. At the start of the 19th century, in a small neighborhood in London named Hammersmith, a ghost that didn't exist killed a man that did. Near the end of 1803, there were reports of a specter dressed in a white sheet, sometimes wearing a calf skull with horns and large glass eyes. The locals were convinced that it was a restless spirit of a man that had recently died. They believed the spirit had not been able to find peace, and now its soul was stuck wandering the earth. The story wouldn't be nearly as famous if not for the several victims that the apparition had claimed, 2 of which were an elderly woman and a pregnant lady, whom were seized by the ghost while walking near the churchyard. They were both so frightened from the experience that both had died mere days from the encounter, but the most famous death goes to one of Thomas Millwood. Thomas was walking the night road dressed in traditional clothes of a bricklayer, who was wearing white attire of his trade, in which he was mistaken for the ghost by Francis Smith. Armed with a shotgun, Francis first threatened the man dressed in pale, walking towards him, and before the chalk-like figure could respond, he shot Thomas in the lower jaw, killing him on the spot. Francis Smith was later convicted of manslaughter, not murder, but an unintentional killing of a person through reckless action, because the courts understood that something had broken in the minds of Hammersmith's people long before that night. The dread did not need a real ghost. It only needed for its listeners to believe in one. Every monster we talked about so far has needed your eyes. The visitor, the ghost of Hammersmith, the man outside my window. All of them needed to be seen in order to hurt you. But nearing the end of the 19th century, Robert W. Chambers suggested something terrifying. What if the monster doesn't need to be seen, but only known? Chambers published a series of short stories named The King in Yellow in 1895, which contained 2 acts of a fictional play. The first act, What Could Be a Little Plain, was beautiful in how it was written, but the book saved its venom for all who reaches its second act. While we're never shown the full contents of both the acts directly, we're given a perspective onto the lives of those who have been altered by it. The king himself is a mimetic entity, which means that it is a conceptual monster composed entirely of information, and the monster of the King in Yellow does not exist in a physical form. Unlike our previous examples, the King in Yellow acts as an informational hazard, infecting and warping every single one of its readers. In its second story, The Mask, the play is not only shown to have abilities to twist minds, but also presented chemistry similar to that to fantasy alchemy. Boris Javon, a sculptor in Paris, was able to figure out an unusual chemical process that allowed anything to turn into pure marble statues of themselves. The solution was hinted at to come from the second act of the play, which provided us with a terrifying thought. The mimetic being that the play does not only allure its readers to twist their minds to the king's will, but also gives you access to forbidden knowledge. If you had known the compound existed, would you take the risk of reading the second act, even if it would come at the cost of your sanity? I know I can't. I'll be blinded by the income of a marble monopoly. This is what is terrifying to me about the entity in the play, for it can begin to twist your perception and blind your own eyes with the fortune ahead. But can you really run away from the monster you so willingly blindfolded yourself for? Now, what if I told you didn't have a choice? What if the blindfold wasn't a temptation you walked into, but a condition you were handed to before you even knew it was waiting in the dark? In 2024's Proximate, you are set miles below sea level, and from the moment you descend, you cannot trust a single thing you see, mostly because your eyes are taken away before the game even starts. At 800 meters below sea level is a lab with several researchers who are investigating ways to make modern-day necromancy by installing AI into corpses. And with a shocking revelation to everybody, they seem to have all gone missing and cut contact with the surface. Now you, a hired contractor by an investment company that is determined to make some of its money back, sent you down to the depths of the ocean floor in order to search for any possible gold left of plunder. You never get the view of the lab itself, for when you first boot up the game, you're given and strapped to something called a sonovisor, a beta AI device you'll spend the entirety of the game wearing as per your contract. The visor consists of several things: a compass, a map that tells you your exact location within the complex, a range to tell you your position to an object, an interpretation of what the AI thinks is the object, and a percentage confidence meter made by the AI of the object. This, interestingly, allows for the main appeal of the game to kick in. When you exit from the console, you step into the lab, walking around and inspecting things with the visor like you are an alien tourist examining layouts of human habitats. But then, your mechanical eye sees strange things. Is what I'm stepping on really jam? Why is there minced beef everywhere? Why does the recycler have 6,000% more waste in it? Why do they have so many corpses? And where is the body missing from its chambers? From here, your sonovisor glitches out. Seems to see a hallucination that even the AI can't even describe. Like whatever you're seeing in the visor is a void that not even intelligence based on the entirety of human science can figure out. Is it moving closer? Your boss calls you. tells you the visor's glitching out, so it decides to remotely control your unit so they can clear up some of the unneeded assets, including the map you used to get here. From here on out, the game feels 10 times more threatening than before. Doors swipe past in an instant, the walls themselves feel like they're closing in on me. I desperately try to clutch onto anything I can use as a landmark, the reception desk, the cleaver in the kitchen. Has there always been a woman standing there? Was something moving around a corpse in this lab just to mess with me? It almost feels intentional, like whatever is in here wants me to know that it's there, not to attack, not yet, just to make sure that I know that I'm not alone, that I've not been alone this entire time, that every corner I turned, every landmark I clung to, every door I was relieved to find, it was already there, watching, waiting for the exact right moment. And the visor cannot tell me when that moment is. Here on forward, the visor does not feel like a tool, but a mind-altering apparatus that intends to twist the only source of information you have left. It sometimes works actively against you. How can it be possible that it's just a head hanging in front of me? When the hell did everything turn into dogs? And why is that thing here again, and how is it breathing down my neck? Then it stops. The hallway's empty. Nothing is there. But nothing being there is not the same as nothing having ever been there, and the visor cannot tell you the difference. Neither can you. And yet, when I think back on everything, the silhouette in my window, the visitor and every broken thing I left behind, the dark underwater hallways of that lab, my most vivid memories are not the moments of dread. They're the moments of stubborn humanity that survived inside of it. My favorite place in all of Look Outside is Mutt's Fish and Chip Shop, where every regular is some unspeakable amalgamation of flesh and teeth and things that should not be able to sit on a bar stool. But they still come in every morning. For coffee they cannot drink, for conversation they cannot have, and when a lost stranger wanders through that door, they help. Whatever they are now, whatever the visitor took from them, a part of who they are survived. And here's the thing about the visitor, something larger than our entire solar system, ancient beyond any measurement we have. When it finally understood that its gaze was hurting us, it left. It didn't know. It was just looking. The most apocalyptic monster in everything we talked about tonight was not malicious, it was just curious. And the moment it understood the damage it caused, it chose to stop. And when Proximate's endings, you do not escape. You find the void that started everything. Nothing that the sonar visor looked at and came back with nothing. And instead of running, instead of leaving the visor on and pretending it isn't there, you take it off. You face it with your own eyes and of everything you have underneath. The dread is still there. It does not go away, but I think that's the point. The unknown is infinite, always will be. There will always be something outside your window, something in the dark, something your mind cannot fully close the door on. That vastness does not shrink, but neither do you. Courage is not the absence of the monster. It is a fish and chip shop open for business at the end of the world. It is taking off the visor. It is a 9-year-old me, eventually, looking out the window. As for the man standing outside, I'm not really scared of him anymore. Not because I conquered anything, not even because I looked and survived, because the first thing I bought with my adult money was blackout curtains from IKEA. Thank you so much for watching. This is a relatively new long-form video that I'm trying out. If you like it, please subscribe and, I don't know, drop a comment maybe. Thank you so much to you and the person standing outside your window watching this too. Bye now.